Meanwhile, some new faces in the race to challenge Donald Trump. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie officially is running for president. The Republican made the announcement last night during a town hall in New Hampshire. In his speech, Governor Christie described the state of American politics and blasted Donald Trump.
A lonely, self-consumed, self-serving mirror hog is not a leader. The person I am talking about, who is obsessed with the mirror, who never admits a mistake, who never admits a fault, and who always finds someone else and something else to blame for whatever goes wrong, but finds every reason to take credit for anything that goes right, is Donald Trump. It's not amusing anymore. It's not entertaining anymore. It is the last throes of a bitter, angry man who wants power back for himself, not for you.
So, Joe, Chris Christie representing the voice of the exhausted Republican, perhaps, saying it's not funny anymore, it's not fun anymore, it's time to move on, and trying to give some of those voters a place to go. Big focus on New Hampshire for him. He thinks that's the place where he can do best. Didn't do great there, it should be pointed out, in 2016 when he ran and soon after dropped out and endorsed Donald Trump. But what's your take on Chris Christie in the race now?
Well, you know, New Hampshire was the site of that February 2016 debate where he ended Marco Rubio's chances to win the nomination. And that was just one debate. And that was his focus in that one debate. You do get the sense that Chris Christie's mission, it may be to win the Republican nomination and be president of the United States. But like Sherman going through Georgia to the sea in his march to the sea, you get a sense here that Chris Christie's march to victory is straight through Donald Trump, and it is political annihilation. That's his goal, total war. And what I suspect, what Marco Rubio saw in one debate, Donald Trump is going to be seeing this entire campaign. Does that move the needle? I don't know. But I was thinking yesterday, Elizabeth, Chris Christie, a former prosecutor. This is a guy that can actually take the case not only about Donald Trump's failings as a president and a politician and a person straight to the voters, but also the federal indictment that is coming. It seems Chris Christie's lined up perfectly to be the one taking it to the voters, going, no. You know what? Great. Your uncle on Facebook told you that. No, let me tell you. I did this for years. I prosecuted for years. Let me tell you why he's wrong and why Donald Trump's wrong and why he's not fit to be president. Maybe Christie's able to carry that message in a way that's stronger than anybody did in 2016.
Maybe, but everyone's going to ask, where have you been the last number of years when you were endorsing Donald Trump, supporting him, talking about becoming his chief of staff? It's a complete U-turn, and it's going to be hard for some voters to take. I mean, yes, he's appealing to that dwindling number of Republicans who are fed up with Donald Trump and need someone else. But again, it's going to be Trump will eviscerate him. And it's going to be annihilate him. So we shall see. He's interesting to watch.
Right.
He's not a boring candidate. He's lively. He's smart. He knows his stuff, but I just wonder how he will do in the current Republican Party.
Well, this was a stronger start than we've seen. I mean, this was going right to the heart of the matter. I can't disagree with one thing he said. I think there are a lot of people who feel that way about Donald Trump, but I'm not sure it's the base. Although there are some members of Trump world or Trump supporters who are tiring of it, and I think Chris Christie can be that voice. And Gaddy, I think he absolutely, as Joe pointed out, former prosecutor, has the skills to meet Trump where he is and to fight hard, possibly even dirty. But my God, that is going to be the question, at least in a general. Where in the world were you? Yeah. Like when the country was melting down over COVID, where in the world were you? And you could do a long list of things that happened right when he was in there by Trump's side that he said nothing.
I mean, that would be a critique of him that I imagine that comes from the press and from the media when he's doing all of those media interviews. But the other candidates who are running against Donald Trump, they may not want to raise that because that will make them look like they are criticizing perhaps Donald Trump as well. So he may get a pass from the other candidates on, well, why weren't you criticizing Trump earlier? Because it slightly puts them in a bit of a in a double-edged position. But I think more than the prosecutorial skills, he just has the temperament. He has that. He has made it clear.
Waiting a long time
he has been waiting. I spoke to him a year ago when he was first thinking of running.
Yeah.
And it was pretty evident in the conversation I had with him that he was waiting to fight Trump. I mean, and he wants to fight Trump, and he relishes fighting Trump. The other candidates are looking at Trump thinking, how can I go round Trump?
Right.
How can I get round him without barely mentioning him? They don't want to take Trump on a fight. But Chris Christie, he wants to fight Trump. And that's fair. I haven't seen a candidate, back even in 2016, was there a candidate who relished the fight with Trump? Apart from perhaps Joe Biden, kind of relished it, but none of the Republicans did, and I don't see any of the other Republicans in this field relishing it in the way that Chris Christie seems to.
Oh, he's liking it a lot, Joe.
Well, and you know, and Kathy's exactly right, and that's what separates Chris Christie from everybody else. We've been whining here on this show that everybody's being polite to Donald Trump while running against Donald Trump to try to destroy Donald Trump. Chris Christie's going straight through Donald Trump, and you know, there is a sliding scale for all Republicans. You know, you could say the same thing about people. You know, James Mattis went in to try to help Donald Trump. A lot of people did. Chris Christie did the same. I will say early on in 2020, it was Chris Christie that started quietly telling people, Willie, in March and April. He said Donald Trump is trying to set this election up, talking about how it's going to be a rigged election. He's already trying to, you know, talk about mail-in balloting and everything else. And they talked about in March of 2020 that this was his plan to try to steal the election from Joe Biden. So again, he was there. He was there all along, and I'm not carrying you know, his water when I say this. The way I look at this Republican field is it's Donald Trump against the field. And people have been trying to figure out, how does Donald Trump get beaten? I think with Chris Christie being the lead prosecutor, that gives the field a chance, at least a 50-50 chance. And if I'm Donald Trump, I don't want this guy going around all the time talking about payoffs to porn stars, talking about, you know, all the things that Chris Christie's going to be talking about during this campaign.